The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 144 with Adam Stevenson, author of My Mind, Body, Golf.
And try and understand the mechanics of the golf swing from the ground up, but get a grasp of your mental game and, develop your performance from your head down.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey there, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, and thank you for joining me again this week. We've got a very special guest, a good friend of mine that I've known for several years. He's actually been on the show back in the early days, in episode number 19, Adam Stevenson, back when we were interviewing him on off-season preparation and his first book, The Golfer's Handbook. Well, Adam has written his second book, and this one's a monster. It's got an amazing amount of content, pictures, drills, everything, and it's called My Mind, Body, Golf, and it's all basically a holistic approach to improving your golf game. And Adam is one of those guys that is just a student of everything, really. But the golf swing especially, he loves teaching and loves learning, not just about the swing, not just about the game, but about the body and how that relates to what you're doing on the golf course. And so today's a special episode simply because I'm such a good friend with Adam. He has been such a mentor and friend of mine over the past several years. And I just wanted to share this huge project that he just created and has just kind of gone live. Going to be on Amazon very soon. I know he's had a couple struggles with the publishing side of Amazon, which I can totally relate to, but it will be on Amazon very soon, and we've got links in the show notes to where you can find the book. But in today's episode, we talk a lot about multiple different pieces of the puzzle when you're working on improving your game. One in particular being the self-image that you have when you step up to the golf ball and what you're thinking about what you've done in the past, what you've done, what you're going to do, and the struggles that you've had and how that impacts the way that you play and things that you can do in order to get around that. We also talk about how to take your practice, what you're doing on the practice tee, what you're doing on the driving range, on the putting green, and how do you take that over to the course. That's one of the biggest struggles that I personally have and that I've seen and heard of from you guys, from the listeners. How do you take those skills that you've learned and actually put them into play when it counts most? So Adam gives us some tips, a couple of drills on how to make your practice more challenging and more competitive. And he discusses his two philosophies on the idea of the loading zone and the learning zone and how you can implement those into your game and also to your practice sessions. And then we discuss the idea of having a pecking order when it comes to the physical side of what you're working on. We talk so much about working in the gym and improving your body and doing the things that you need to do to make your body better. But how do you figure out what you need to work on first, what you need to work on second, and what you need to work on third, and beyond that? So we talk about specifically, when do you address physical limitations, strength, speed, those types of things. And Adam gives us a bit of a breakdown of how he addresses those when meeting somebody and working with them in the lessons. And then lastly, we talk about a few things that are a little bit outside the box when you think about golf instruction. We discuss a little nutrition and especially sleep and recovery and the importance that those things have on how you perform when you actually get to the golf course. What have the activities that you've done the day before or the week before or the month before, how are those related to the way that you show up and play the game? So I'm so proud of Adam for this accomplishment, this huge book, and I know that if you get your hands on it, you're going to love it. He's one of the most entertaining guys that I know when it comes to his instruction, his videos, and just has a great personality. So I know that the book is going to be filled with Adam Stevenson. So I know you're going to enjoy it. Before we jump into the episode, though, I want to say a quick thanks to our sponsor for this show, which is PGA Tour Live. And PGA Tour Live basically gives you the ability to watch the golf that nobody else gets to watch. So, everybody, the biggest stars, they're playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Typically, we only get to see the Saturday, Sunday rounds. We never get to see what happens on Thursday morning in those early rounds or Friday morning. So this way you get to watch those guys play every single round. So for only $39 or $39.99 annually or $5.99 a month, you can watch them anywhere. You can watch them on your iOS device, your Android, your computer, your Apple TV, whatever you want. there's an app for that. You can go online and you can watch those early morning rounds. So be sure to check out the PGA Tour Live, which you can get at pgatour.com. All right, let's get into this interview with a very good friend of the 18 Strong podcast, Mr. Adam Stevenson. Adam Stevenson, welcome back to the 18 Strong podcast. Thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
All the way from Denmark. Can you believe that it was episode number 19 that you were on the 18 Strong podcast years ago, and now this is episode, I think, number 144. It's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, a lot's happened since then.
That's right. So we're going to talk a lot about your most recent book, your second book. First book was The Golfer's Handbook, which we talked about on the first show. We talked a lot about off-season preparation the first time you were on here. But you have been on a project for how long has this most recent book, My Mind, Body, Golf, how long did that take you? I remember talking to you about it months and months ago.
Yeah, it's pretty much taken my whole life. Well, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the book is about, the psychological part of the game, which is pretty much the psychological part of golf, and you combine that with the physical aspect and the technical aspect. And so you've pretty much got a lot of things going on in one book. And I've been pretty much putting pen to paper for a little over a year. So it hasn't taken too long to write this book, but there's been a lot of thought prior to it, for pretty much a lot of the topics I can sort of pull out of my life from previous periods of my life and sort of say, okay, that I've experienced that I can relate to. This has happened this time in my life, so I can relate to that and write about it.
So the whole topic of the book is, I think it's awesome because as a golf professional, you're daily in and out, you're working with individuals, you're teaching, you're on the teaching range, working on golf swings, but just knowing you and all the studying that you've done, the certifications you've gone through, you've really delved into how the body works and how the connection of the body and the brain and everything. So you've taken almost like the holistic approach, I know is a word that you would use, to really figure out how to make your golfers better and to just help students all over the place with your books. What was it that really drove you to go from just teaching the golf swing itself to really digging into both the physical and the mental side of these?
I just find there's such a huge correlation. I think pretty much every golfer wants to hit the ball further, and not many of them have a lot of them have limitations. I mean, that's just a huge part of our everyday lives, but not just regular people, but elite level golfers as well. There's a lot of limitations, and just being able to figure that out and trying to understand it a little bit more. That's what's driven me to sort of try and educate myself further, trying to understand the body a little bit more and understand the connection, the mind or the body swing connection has been an important part for me.
All right, so let's dig into the book a little bit because there's so many different pieces that you touch on. As we mentioned, the physical side, the swing side, the mental side. I'm curious, just mentally, what are some of the things that you have touched on and some of the things that you've learned for individuals to succeed in their golf game? Because we tend to get so focused on the technique portion of it, or here on a fitness related podcast, we tend to talk about the endurance factor and fatigue levels and not being able to move properly. But mentally, what are some of the things that you found make the biggest impact?
Oh, that's a good question. There's probably a lot of different answers to that question. It's a loaded question. I think one of the biggest things is self-image. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that pretty much golfers have to get over. I think that there's a lot of, blockage going on. People mentally will be standing there, maybe having a lot of expectations, and when they don't meet their expectations, there's a lot of disappointment. And, it's all got to do with what their image of themselves is. And I think what I'm trying to do with the book, what I'm definitely trying to do with the book is trying to get people, make them more aware that their self-image is probably what can be sort of preventing them from performing at a better level. just having the ability to go out for a round of golf, or to go to, be part of a tournament, and just really try and go out there with, expectations, yes, but not really expectations that, are going to try and, if the game doesn't go the way you want it to, if your round isn't going quite as good as you'd hope for, or you have a few bad shots, you're able to, sort of pull back from that and just kind of just enjoy being there, and really, I think a lot of people, they really do definitely struggle with getting too far ahead of themselves or too far behind themselves, and they kind of lose track of now, that ever crucial moment we have in our lives right here, right now. This is the most important time. So just being able to have the right mindset to kind of like separate themselves from what's just happened, or what might happen, or what we expect to happen. So really trying to focus on trying to get people in touch with who they are here and now. And you hit a bad shot, or you've had a bad round, yeah, you have to evaluate it, but just try and accept it as soon as possible, so you can get back to this moment in time, so that you're able to perform from now onwards.
Yeah, it seems like so many times we'll step up to a tee box, and maybe it's a familiar course that we've played, or a familiar situation that we've been in, and we kind of revert back to what we've done before. How do we transition past that? Or do you have any specific activities or drills that you would have someone do in order to kind of break that mental tie to whatever they've done before?
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something. I think you need people. They have to have some sort of something that they can fall back on, that they're able to move forward without having the baggage with them the rest of the round if they've had a bad shot or a bad hole. And one of the best ways to do that, from my experience and understanding, is breathing techniques, and just to really try and get in touch with the breathing. Because when you're working on your breathing and trying to focus on your breathing, it'll help you get grounded. It'll help you stay in the now. You're actually able to focus on what you're doing here and now. Your breath, breathing in and out, just really helps a lot. It really kind of calms the nerves a little bit. The nervous system kind of chills out a little bit, and you're able to just kind of get grounded again and get back to this moment in time.
What is there, like a specific technique that you teach people, like when they step on the tee box, or is it kind of individually based where somebody has to kind of find their own rhythm? And then, kind of side note question, when they're literally getting ready to hit the ball, do you give them any kind of instruction on what their breathing pattern should be? That's always been kind of a question of mine. What do you have the person do right before they're getting ready to hit a ball?
That's a really good question, and I probably have to say that's kind of individual. I know there's a lot of different things out there that suggestions people might have, but I do find that's very individual as to what they're standing over the ball, how they're breathing. I've heard certain experts say that they should breathe out and try and really try and just to exit all the air out of their lungs and their diaphragm. But I think it's important to have a bit of a breathing sensation going on, a calm breathing. I would say it's definitely individual, but being able to, if you just had a really bad hole where you've had a double bogey and you're on your way, you've just 3-putted the green, you're on your way to the next tee box. I think that's probably where you can do the best work. Just try and work on your breathing, trying to, maybe use some numbers, count to the number 4 on the way in, breathing in through your nose, and then exit out through your mouth, breathing out, counting to the number 5, and trying to repeat that sort of sequence maybe 3 or 4 times before you're off onto the next tee. So, you're actually really able to calm down and calm your nerves a bit, and you're ready to perform and get back into this moment.
They say that that's one of the things that Tiger Woods was able to do so well. And I know that Tiger Woods isn't the greatest example with everything going on these days, but when Tiger was at his best, they said that he was able to basically forget whatever shot he just hit. And I don't know if it was a breathing technique or what it was that he used, but being able to go from a great shot and be super excited, or go from a terrible shot that just went in the water and be able to walk to the next shot and basically wipe it out. Aside from breathing, are there any other mental tips that you could give us to kind of help get over that little mistake, or even again, kind of the other swing of emotion? An incredible shot. My dad was just in Scottsdale, and a buddy of his got a hole in one, and he said for the next 3 tee boxes, he was all over the place. He didn't know what to do because he had run the gamut on emotions. So any suggestions for that?
Yeah. Again, it's no different, really. I mean, it's just trying to get in touch with this moment in time, really. I think, the hole-in-one thing, I've definitely experienced that as well, where I've actually got a hole-in-one on the first hole of a round, and I was so excited that I actually went off, continued playing the round with the same ball, had the worst round of my life, and I lost the ball. So that was a learning experience for sure. But I think it's just so important to get in touch again. Just try and accept, like Tiger Woods has been really well at doing throughout his career, is being able to accept the moment, accept what's happened as fast as possible. And I think it's not just Tiger Woods. I think it's pretty much all top world-class athletes. They have that ability to accept really quickly so they can move forward. I heard a story about Jack Nicklaus that had been playing a tournament. I'm not sure. I'm really sorry. I don't know the tournament, the name of the tournament, or when it was exactly. But I heard that he had 3-putted the last hole 18, a 72-hole tournament, and he lost the tournament by one stroke. And one of the reporters asked him a week afterwards, when he was attending some sort of an event a week afterwards, if he had if he thought that it was that 3-putt that he had lost the tournament because of the 3-putt. And Jack Nicklaus, he had already forgotten. He'd forgotten that 3-putt. That he actually said, "I'm sorry, sir. I believe you're misunderstanding. I've never 3-putted hole 18 final round of a tournament." And that was what Jack Nicklaus had convinced himself of. And fair enough. That's maybe not the most healthy way to do it, but it seemed to work for him. And he accepted that and was able to come forward and forgot about it, actually. It's a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, it's almost like, just kind of completely wiping the slate clean, whether that be maybe a little bit of dementia or denial or whatever. But there is something to be said for that, being able to just kind of clear the slate.
Yeah, for sure. It could have definitely been on the seniors tour. I'm not sure.
So I know that also in your book you give a lot of practical tips for just practice in general, because that's something that I think we all tend to struggle with, and it's a question that I get a lot, is how do I go from the practice tee to the golf course? How do I take it from one to the other? And whoever's asking me, I tell them flat out that I'm not the person to teach you how to do that. But I know that you've dealt with that a lot, and that's probably something that your students ask you all the time. You can get a swing perfect on the driving range, or you can even go out and do a playing lesson and somebody's looking really good. But what are some of the best ways to then take that, hold on to that new skill or whatever it is, that new shot that you hit, and take that onto the course with you and not let all the distractions get in your way?
Wow, bravo! That's a brilliant question. That question there is the money question, and it's a good one. What people tend to do when they're on the driving range or in the training facility, that they get really comfortable with that environment they're in, and it's quite unique. It's quite interesting. Golf is an interesting sport because it's probably one of the only sports that we actually train in a separate facility than where we compete. So if you take other sports like over here in Europe, we have handball, we have soccer, American soccer. We have over in the US, we've got baseball, basketball, swimming. All those events, you're pretty much training in the same environment that you're competing. So it's kind of an interesting thing that golf, we actually move our training facility to a separate location and tell people, okay, now let's go out and train, let's practice. Let's get really comfortable with what we're doing here. And by the way, let's go over and compete now and try and take it in a completely different environment. So it's kind of a bit of a hurdle. I think one of the best ways to get over that hurdle there of being able to take your practice and make your practice better so that you can perform on the golf course is just pretty much making it as challenging as possible. Trying to make the practice facility as close to a golf course as possible, or at least in your head. It doesn't look like a golf course, but if you're able to train individually, one shot at a time, and just kind of, I think Pia Nielsen and Lynn Merritt, they have a brilliant system. I'm pretty sure we've all heard of it by now. It's called the think box and play box, and that's just brilliant. Like, that's just really dividing every shot up on the practice range, so that you're able to step into that shot with a fresh goal. When you've got a new goal with each shot, you're able to focus on that shot with the same focus that you would pretty much have on the golf course. It's brilliant. Now, I talk a little bit about that in my book as well. I call it the loading zone and the learning zone, and I do mention it as the think box and the play box, because it's very similar. But what I call is when you're behind the ball, you're able to think about the shot, but you're pretty much loading your mind with all these different input. Where the wind's coming from, what club selection you're going to use, all this stuff. I call it loading. So you're like loading your computer, your software up. And then when you step over the line and you're on the ball and you're on top of the ball, you're ready to make your shot, you're all of a sudden in the learning zone. And that's the reason I call it the learning zone is because every shot you're hitting is different. Even though you're trying to intentionally hit the same shot, you're actually moving slightly different. Your nervous system's not firing exactly the same way. So you're learning a new movement pattern each time, but you're also able to look at the shot, how you executed it, and learn from that. So you're getting feedback from that. So I call that area the learning zone. Practice is so important with golf, but I think where people miss the boat is that they're just practicing too often, like machine gun golf, where they're hitting one shot after the other. What is it they call it? A drag and hit type of golf. And for people to improve their performance on the golf course, they just have to get away from that and just get into that, outside of their comfort zone and get into the wild, where they're actually able to hit shots similar to how they would play the same mindset that you would have on the golf course. And that's pretty much how the best way to practice, just to get out of that comfort zone and just practice the way you play golf, one shot at a time.
I love that you call it the learning zone, because we're constantly getting feedback on what's going on and what that shot felt like. There's actually something called the dynamic systems theory, which I just learned going through the functional range courses, and it basically talks about the idea that we all have this idea that there's these different movement patterns, and the more that we ingrain these different movement patterns, that you basically create this one pattern, so like a squat pattern or a golf swing pattern. But really, every single time you make that movement, it's going to be a little different. No matter how perfectly you think it is, it's going to be a little different. Your muscles are going to fire a little bit differently. And so the whole idea kind of goes against the idea that we can groove this one specific pattern, but that we're actually learning a better way to kind of shift and pivot and work our way around some of these other influences that are going to affect, whether that be your golf swing or whether that be you squatting with a weight that shifts on you or something like that. So I love that idea that you're constantly learning, and you can never groove in that perfect swing. And I think that's what we tend to try to do on the driving range, is get that one perfect swing. But Jordan Spieth never makes the same exact swing. Jason Day never makes the same exact swing. And so learning to deal with all those changing parameters is really what you're talking about. So how do you use like a gamification kind of a thing when you're practicing, or how do we make it challenging or more challenging, more like the golf course, so we can take it over there? Are there specific drills that you would recommend?
Actually, when I'm teaching like elite level golfers, I usually try and get them to, if we're lucky enough and we're in an environment or in a situation where they actually are with colleagues, then it's always interesting to get them to try and compete against each other, just to get that little competition going. It's nothing major, but just to get them to compete, because they're trying to beat each other. It's just a fantastic mindset to get them into. It's so close to the actual tournament golf that they'll be playing on the golf course. So if they can train with that same mindset where they're actually competing against each other, and they may just be doing it for a laugh, but to be able to get them in that mindset is just the best way to train.
Can you give me kind of a specific example of how you would have, a couple people that you're working with, or a couple buddies or whatever, where they're actually creating a competition, but they're still in kind of practice mode?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got you may have on a driving range, for example, at our facility, we have 9 different flags or markings out there. So, and they've all got different lengths on them. So, just having like a shootout, for example, shooting, 2 people shooting out, seeing who gets the ball closer to the 150 marker, and 9 holes. So it's kind of a competition until the end. And it just kind of, that's sort of this proper sort of environment for them to compete in. I think something that really kind of different length shots every single time, where they actually really have to think about each shot. Again, go through that loading zone where they're trying to load all the input up in their head there. So they're trying to calculate, what am I going to do? How am I going to hit the shot? Visualizing it. Exactly the same thing you'd be doing on the golf course.
And that's something that you could do on your own too. It doesn't have to be against somebody else. You can kind of create competitions with yourself. Is that something that you would do, kind of that same situation, but have them, maybe keep track or keep stats so they know that what they did last time?
They could do that for sure. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, I want to jump into a little bit of a different side. So aside from the practicing of the technique and the golf, something that's different about you, Adam, and that I've loved ever since I met you was your fascination with the body and how the body works. And you've gone through, a bunch of the TPI, fitness progressions, and I think the medical progressions. And, you're always learning more about the physical being and how the body works and how the joints move, which I think is different than most of your typical golf professionals. You don't necessarily find many golf professionals with your background in the physical side. What has gotten you so involved in learning about that piece? And then I want to talk about some of the pieces of the book that you've tied in. And I know you kind of call it the pecking order of what you should focus on and when. Let's take a quick time out here to thank our sponsor, Rad Roller, for their support on the show. And you can check them out at radroller.com to find some of the greatest soft tissue, self-myofascial massage tools on the planet, really. So in this episode, we're talking so much about the body and how much it influences your golf swing and how you have to be physically prepared for what you're doing in your swing. And that's a big part of the book that Adam has written about. And I know Adam's a big fan of the Rad Roller products, as am I. And you can use these different, whether it be the Helix or the Rad rod or the rounds, you can use them to basically work on the different muscles and tight spots on your body so you can move better and you can swing a club better. You can take these things anywhere you want to go. You can stick them in your golf bag. You can stick them in your suitcase. I'm going to take it with me when I go on vacation in a couple of weeks down to Gulf Shores, hopefully play a little bit of golf. And I know that I'll be using the Rad products to help make sure that I can move as well as possible, both before and after the round. So if you want to get your hands on the Rad Roller products, or you want to just go check them out, you haven't checked them out yet, go to radroller.com. Be sure to use the code 18STRONG and you'll get a discount on your purchase. All right, let's get back to the author of My Mind Body Golf, Adam Stevenson.
I think what's intrigued me the most about, I think the golf swing is an athletic movement, right? So I think it's probably one of the most athletic movements in all sports. So the, ability to coordinate a finely moving, a very, very, very difficult movement such as a golf swing, to be able to coordinate that movement and time it correctly demands a lot of athleticism. And so, is it the hands? Is it the club? Is it, what's driving that athleticism? And the way I see it is the body, right? So if you want to have golfers move more athletically, then you have to kind of go after the root of the problem, which, and again, in my words, would be the body. So, trying to understand that a little bit better, taking the TPI, different levels of the fitness and the medical, just to understand, how the body works. How is it individual for individual people? Just understanding it, trying to understand that, I think it's a huge advantage to be able to work with a client, that when I understand a little bit about how the biodynamics of their body is working and why it's working as it is, instead of just trying to say, oh, turn your hips a little bit more, and they're not able to do it. They're frustrated, I'm frustrated, and nobody's getting anywhere. So to be able to understand why they're not turning their hips more would be a huge advantage for me. And I think that's just it's a really interesting part of the game for me, is understanding how the body moves. And I think what the pecking order you talked about there, that's I go a little bit more into detail about it in my first book, where it's very much from what people having physical limitations and how to screen them, so that they're able to find out if they have any limitations, either how they can work around them, or if they want to work with them, which of course I would definitely try and push them towards, so they're able to remove some of these limitations through doing some exercises, correctional exercises. That's the first part of the pecking order, is understanding where their body, how it can move, understanding who they are and why they move the way they do. The second part of the pecking order would be able to say, okay, if I'm fortunate enough to remove any of these limitations, then where do I go from there? And so there's a strength phase, but it's not a strength phase as, I think what a lot of people talk about when they go to the gym and they're lifting a lot of weights. The strength phase is it's more like you're lifting pretty much your own body weight. You're doing athletic movements, very much like you would be doing in the golf swing. It's not golfish, but it's you're using your body from the ground up. You're trying to, maybe doing a squat, a squat jump or something like that, where you're teaching your body the dynamics to jump up. And the higher you can jump, there's actually a correlation. I believe Dr. Greg Rose from TPI has done some amazing testing with this, found out that the higher you can jump, the longer the ability a golfer has to hit the ball. So that's a pretty cool correlation there. So if I'm teaching somebody physical movement, I'm going to want to get them to be able to do certain movement patterns. If they have the physical ability to do it, if they don't have any limitations, then I want them to try and learn this movement pattern, so they're able to, generate a little bit more efficiency in their golf swing. And I guess the third part of that pecking order would be speed. So you've got removing limitations as one, going through a bit of a strength phase as two, and then trying to generate some speed on top of that. And the reason I do it in that order is because, again, if you have any physical limitations, then if you're building a muscle and trying to learn some movement patterns, but you have limitations, then you're going to pretty much be loading yourself up for injury. There's a high potential that you're getting yourself injured. So I don't want people to go into any kind of a strength phase if they have any limitations. So I want them to remove that first. When they get the green light to go into the strength phase, then they can, work on that. If they can get some movement patterns where they're able to, move efficiently and lift their own body weight, then of course you can start adding more weight from there and get a little bit more explosive. And then the speed element. The speed element is just it's just an important part of an athletic movement. You have to have speed if you want to hit the ball further. But again, if you kind of get it out of that order, then there's a definite potential to get injured, and the chances are you won't be able to time it as efficiently either. So,
I think this is a kind of a great place to ask some questions because everybody's at the state where nobody's perfect, nobody has a completely physical limitation-free body. So how do we determine? Because we've got to work on some strength. All golfers want to hit a ball farther, so it's going to be hard to tell them don't work on swinging harder or hitting a ball farther. How do you how do you get your clients, or what are some suggestions for people when they know they have a physical limitation, or multiple, and is it really likely that we're going to clear up all of those physical limitations before going into strength, or are there times where you have to kind of balance those out and kind of pick and choose?
I think picking and choosing is probably good. Balancing it out is good. And a lot of times, the physical limitations they may have, if it's in, for example, internal hip mobility, if they're lacking the hip mobility, sometimes, and quite often more than not, it may be that they're lacking core strength. So it's a great question you have there. So if they're lacking core strength, then they might their brain might actually shut down their ability to turn their hips to prevent them from injuring themselves. So in those conditions there, if you're lacking strength in your core area or in your glutes or your abdominal area, then I think that would be a great idea, where you go in and you maybe working on the strength phase would actually help your ability to move more efficiently. So you actually might remove some of those limitations by working on strength phases. So great question there.
Yeah, I'm curious. When somebody comes to you and they're working on their swing, and maybe it's a technique thing, and you see that they've got an issue in their swing, they've got a flaw or whatever, but you also recognize, okay, now we've got a limitation, we've got a physical limitation I want you to work on. What are some things that you end up doing with them, knowing that they want to work on improving their golf game? You know that they have to work on this physical limitation, but what do you have them do, like practice-wise or golf related, while they're working on that in conjunction? I think, so many times we try to say that it's black and white. Oh, you got to fix this, then you do this, then you do this. But, as you know, it's never black and white. We've always got our issues. So when you run into somebody like that, what do you do with that person?
Well, depending on what their limitation is, I would just try and have a look and see how their body's moving, and see, okay, well, if they're lacking lead hip mobility and are unable to turn into their lead hip in the forward swing, certain things like, for example, turning their lead foot out slightly out, giving them that little bit of an advantage to be able to turn a little bit more freely through in the impact area and through the follow through, then the swing. That's just things like that. Just flaring the feet slightly is a really great way to do it. Also, just getting them to maybe ball position can have a lot to do. Like if people are tendency to hang back a little bit, maybe they're just using their upper body, and I want them to move their entire body a little bit more athletically, then maybe moving the ball a little bit forward under their lead arm would be a great way to try and trigger them to move a little bit more through the ball. Even if they have any limitations, just trying to work on that, getting them to move more athletically, to try and help them at the same time, giving them some exercises, some correctional exercise to work on improving their limitations. I think posture is a huge thing as well. I mean, just the way people set up to the ball, they may have imbalances in their body that's creating them poor posture, but being able to try and address the ball with improving their posture, even if there are physical imbalances that are trying to pull them maybe in a C posture where their upper body's a little bit rounded, try and get them to somehow try and get them to stand a little bit more of a neutral position. I think that's the key there, because just helping them get into a better posture is a huge advantage in itself. You'll watch them from one swing to the next being able to move so much more freely.
Yeah, sometimes. So it's okay to baby step your way into certain things. I know you've done several videos on flaring that left foot out a little bit, or the front foot out a little bit, to let you kind of rotate through a little bit more freely. But knowing that, okay, maybe you're not always going to want to do that. Maybe you're working on getting that foot a little bit straighter, but for the time being, your left hip, your internal rotation is no good. So why would we bang into that and keep hurting you? Let's work on it outside of the practice tee to get more range of motion, but let's adjust right now so you can play good golf too, because that's what most of us want is, I want to play good golf now. I can work on my stuff, but how do I play good golf now? So I think it's important that you mentioned that it's okay to make some of those little adjustments, but then work on them, kind of in the background, and then slowly adapt into whatever the position is you want to get to. You keep using the phrase moving athletically, and I'm a big believer in this, and I just kind of want to get an idea of what your definition is of an athletic movement or moving athletically in your swing, because I know you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I think just getting, I'm sure that most of the listeners, they may be familiar or may not be familiar with the word kinematic sequence. And that's just a chain of movement where your body's working, sort of like being able to efficiently transfer energy from one segment of the body to the next, so that when you're actually swinging a golf club, it's not just one segment of the body working all by itself. There's this whole intricate movement going on where each individual body part sort of contributing to creating more energy into that golf swing to create more power. So I would call that an athletic movement, being able to use your entire body instead of just single segments.
Don't you think it's funny how we tend to forget that? Like sometimes when we step over a ball, we just forget that, maybe I used to swing a baseball bat, or, I used to play some other rotary sport, and most people naturally have some sort of a rotational pattern that they've done before, but we put that golf club in our hands and it's almost like you kind of wipe the slate clean and forget about it. Do you experience that with clients?
All the time. And I think it's quite neat, because if you get them to swing a golf club up at waist height, as if it was a baseball bat, they would do probably the most beautiful golf swing you'd ever seen. I'm not sure if you've actually gone in and watched some YouTube videos of baseball players where they're swinging a bat. It looks very similar to a golf swing, very athletic. But the moment you actually put a ball down on the ground, all of a sudden you have to try and think, okay, what is my goal with this golf ball? How do I want to hit it? And most people, for the beginning, when they start learning how to play golf, success for them is to get the ball up in the air. So all of a sudden they start going in there and think, okay, well now if I swing just naturally, I'm not going to be able to get the ball up in the air. Maybe I'll try and see if I can get in under the ball and scoop it up in the air. And all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of swing issues that come into play there, and they start hitting the ground before the ball, or they start whiffing it, and just everything that under the sun can go wrong from that moment forward. So definitely playing golf from a bent over position to try and being able to hit the ball from the ground, that's a huge hurdle in itself for a lot of people, just to get that ball, that first initial golf shot to come up and fly. They're like trying to manipulate it somehow to get it to work.
Have you ever used a baseball tee or anything like that in your lessons?
I did, actually. Last time I was over in North America, or I think it was a few times ago, I bought like a proper tee it was like a transportable tee from, I think it's called T-ball. Yep. Over there. They're teaching kids how to play baseball. Yeah, I thought that would be brilliant. I'm going to try and teach golfers how to play from a tee, like a really high up tee. And the first time I had it at the lesson tee, one of my pupils, he took a swing and he cracked the thing right in the middle. So I thought that was an expensive lesson for me. But,
that's funny. That reminds me, I'm gonna have to grab I have a tee, because that's how kids here in the States, when they're going in to play baseball for the first year, they hit a ball off a tee. So I've got one in my garage I need to take to the gym, and just getting people to work on that athletic movement. A question for you about this whole project. So I know this has taken about a year or so. You've been working on it a lot. What's something that you may have learned over the past year or maybe 2 years that you've put into this project that you maybe wouldn't have expected to put into it if you did this 4 or 5 years ago?
That's a lot.
Yeah, maybe something that you learned that you're like, what, this has much more of an impact on golfers than I ever would have realized 5 years ago.
I think there's a lot of things that have I'm thinking differently. I definitely evolve, and I'm trying to learn. As you said before, I take a lot of courses. I'm trying to learn as much as possible, and over a 5-year period, I've learned a lot. But I think one of the things that maybe is unique about the book is that it's definitely I've been able to explain things, I think, more simply, because I think I'm understanding things on a different level now than I did 5 years ago. So it's a good thing that I waited 5 years for writing the book. So it's a little bit simpler to understand some of the ideas in it. And that just comes with experience, too. I think, there's, like, for example, I just got a body track. The body track, it's like measuring a mat that you're standing on. You can make golf swings from it. You've heard of it?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. I just got one of those over the winter here, and it's so cool because there's a lot of things in there that, I'm looking at a little differently now, but I was also pretty much, I've always thought of the golf swing from the ground up, but now just being able to back it up by numbers and to get people to focus on it. I mean, that's something I've always taught. I've tried to always teach an athletic movement from the ground up with most of my golfers. And now just having a piece of equipment like the body track is just a fantastic way to, sort of say to myself, okay, well, that actually wasn't, now I have scientific proof proving that some of my theories were actually pretty spot on. So that's a neat thing to be able to, definitely, what do you say? You kind of like understand the theories differently now because I have a piece of equipment that's actually backing up my knowledge, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of validating what you were teaching, for sure.
Yeah.
One other thing that I think is super unique, I don't hear many golf pros talk about this except for you. A couple topics: nutrition and sleep. You tend to put a lot of stock in those. And what is it about, kind of the recovery process that has made such an impact on you and what you teach?
Oh, that's a great question. If you go back to that practice question you had about how to practice, well, I think what it is you need to understand that if you're not sleeping properly, you're not able to recover properly. But sleeping in itself is when your brain and your nervous system and your muscles, they go in and they start repairing. And it's like you take the practice you've had the day before, it like lays down all these tracks of memory. So the short-term memory from your practice session the day before becomes long-term memory. It gets stored in your brain, in your movement patterns. And you can only get that when you're sleeping. So, sleep is a major thing. It's where you're being able to remember your movement that you've learned the day before. So all your hard work and practice is not just going to waste, or it's maybe not going to waste, but it'll take longer. So I think getting good sleep and getting good recovery is a massive advantage if you want to try and speed up your learning process. And that's just one of the things about sleep. The other thing is that you're actually, getting your body fit for fight the next day. So you're able to get up in the morning and you're able to, perform at a very, very high level. If you're not sleeping well, then your body is not able to repair all the cells that are damaged the day before, or it's just such an important part. The circadian cycles of our being. We just really need to get our sleep. Like, it's so important. And nutrition. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Nutrition is equally as important, for sure. You're not going to fill up you're not going to last very long. You're not going to last very long in your performance. You may be, if you're young and you're thinking to yourself, I can eat McDonald's or fast food, or I can eat that stuff and get away with it, and that's fair enough. But the thing is, you're not going to be able to last very long. And when the tough get, when it really gets tough out there, you're feeling as though you've got, you've been playing tournament golf for a few years and you really want to take your game to the next level. I mean, nutrition is such a huge part of it. You could really move yourself, like just, physically, mentally, you're able to think more clearly. You're not as tired. There's just so many aspects of nutrition. It's so important.
So can you give us maybe one or two either habits or even hacks? People love hacks these days. One or two things, maybe one on sleep and one on nutrition that I'm sure you've included in the book, or something that you've implemented into your daily routine that has made a big difference. Okay.
Well, sleep one of the hacks you can do for sleep, I guess, is just this is a really good tip that I read from a sleep specialist, and he actually just said that, and it's really resonated with me because it works for me very well. It's just having complete pitch black at night. So the reason for that is because when there's just a little bit of light in the room, he uses the measurement of you can hold the hand. If you can see your hand about a foot width in front of your eyes, then it's too light. And the reason for that is because if you're able to see just a little bit of light, then your body starts producing cortisol, which is your hormone that you're actually keeping yourself awake. It's the hormone that you actually need to have to stay awake during the day and to be able to perform. There's so many things that are good with cortisol, but at night when you're trying to sleep, you want to have your sleep hormone out there. It's called melatonin, and that gets produced when it's dark. So, if you're following your circadian cycles there, you want to have pitch black. You don't want any light in your room at all. So, this sleep specialist that I read about, he actually tapes his window up with cardboard, but I haven't gone to that extreme yet.
Mm-hmm. And then you have any nutrition habits that you've implemented?
Yeah, just eat good foods. It's not that difficult. There's just, mom's homemade cooking. That's, I guess it depends on who the mom is. But
yeah, right. You gotta be careful there.
Yeah. But, just really good homemade cooking and whole foods. You want to have organic foods, right? That's just an absolute must if you can get that. If you can't get that, then you just go to the regular grocery store and buy your foods, It's just so important, making them yourselves. It's kind of a therapeutic part of the day for me as well, just to make my own food, to prepare it myself. I actually enjoy the preparing process of making my own meals. So try it, make your own food, and just eat really good, wholesome foods.
Awesome. All right, man. I know the last time we had you on the show, we asked you all the typical questions, but we've got a couple other questions that have come up over the years, and I've got to ask you if golf was like baseball or a boxing match, and you had to pick a song walking to the first tee box, what would Adam Stevenson's song be?
I've heard some of your other interviews, so I was kind of prepared for this one. And I actually have to think The Eye of the Tiger. Yes.
I love it. That's one of the, that has to be the greatest answer of all time. It's
such a, the Rocky Balboa. It's just so classic. It's good.
Speaking of which, there are pictures of you in a boxing ring in the book with you fighting yourself in trunks, shirt off. So that's very appropriate for this song.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I can't remember if I asked you this question last time or not, so I'm going to ask it again. You may have a different answer. But if you had a chance to play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the world, past, present, or future, who would it be and where would you play?
Oh, geez. That one I wasn't prepared for. But you know what? I think that the people that I'd love to play golf with, those are just my friends, people that I get along with, my colleagues that I really enjoy with. I think like yourself, some of our other little group there. I think Jason Glass. I'd like to have Lindsey Mannion out there. I'd like to have Jordan Yesk, Clint Howard. Get those guys. Nick Mueller. We got to get you out. Mitch Sadowski. We got to get you guys out there. We're gonna go play some golf sometime soon. The reason for this is because I think that one of the things people, when they're playing golf, sometimes they take it too seriously, and just getting out there enjoying a round of golf with your friends is just nothing better than that.
Yeah, we keep talking about that trip to Whistler, which has to happen one of these days.
Oh, for sure.
All right, man. Any last piece of advice that you have for everybody here in the 18 Strong community? And then let us know where we can find the book, where we need to go to get it. Obviously, we'll have it on the show notes and everything here.
Yeah, last minute advice. The golf swing is built from the ground up, but the game of golf is built from your head down. So, if you want to perform at your best, I want you to, take a bit of a holistic approach and try and understand the mechanics of the golf swing from the ground up, but get a grasp of your mental game and, develop your performance from your head down. That was the words of advice.
Awesome. And where can we find the book and follow you online and everything that's going on with Adam Stevenson?
Yeah, I actually have a homepage up running under mymindbodygolf.weebly.com, but you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Just search for Adam Stevenson. You'll catch me there.
Awesome. And is the book on Amazon yet?
It is actually, as we speak, it is being put in Amazon, so it will be available. I'm also shipping it out individually if people want to have a personalized signature. I'd love to send one off to you. You can order that on the homepage. Otherwise, Amazon, it'll be up and running very shortly.
Fantastic. Adam, just have to say, man, first of all, thanks for taking the time to come on the show. It's always a pleasure, and it's been such a great honor to get to know you so well and be able to call you a friend. But I just have to say, from some of the people that you already mentioned on the show, we're very proud of your second huge accomplishment in this book. And, it's just inspiring to watch you create that and see where you're going and all the people that you're helping.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jeff. It has been an honor being part of your 18 Strong group, and I think you're doing some great things. Just look forward to working in the future with you. It's been awesome.
Awesome, man. We'll talk very, very soon.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us here on the 18 Strong podcast this week with our special guest, Adam Stevenson. If you want any more info on Adam or you want to find out where to follow him, just go to 18strong.com and look up Adam or episode number 144, and you'll find all the links and information that we talked about in this episode, including a link to his previous episode on the show here. And you can find his book, My Mind Body Golf, there as well. I want to thank our sponsors for the show, the PGA Tour Live and radroller.com, for their support on the show. And of course, if you haven't joined our private Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement, we would love to see you come over to the group and just kind of join the conversation and say hello. We always like to hear what's going on with you, what questions you have, and how we can make the show better. And one last thing before we go, I have a quick favor to ask. If you haven't left a review for the 18 Strong podcast, or you're not subscribed to the 18 Strong podcast in iTunes, every review on there helps spread the word a little bit more about the show and gets it out to more golfers, which is the main objective here. So if you wouldn't mind going and leaving a review, if you enjoy the show, we would be honored for you to do that and greatly appreciative. It is our personal mission here at 18 Strong to make this show as great as possible, get as great of guests as possible, and the best way to do that is to continue to grow and build the listenership. So thank you again for your support. Train hard, practice smart, play better golf, and I'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.